Lake Bodom. 4 teenagers ventured on a romantic vacation to rough it out in a single tent on the shore of a tranquil lake. The following morning, however, 3 of them would be dead. The 4th, brutally injured in the attack, would become a primary suspect 44 years later in what would become known as the Lake Bodom murders, Finland's most notorious unsolved murders. This unsolved case has captivated the world for over half a century, as the perpetrator has never been identified. In this video, we will explore the story of the Lake Bodom murders, the gruesome details of the crime, the resulting investigation, and the various theories that have been put forth regarding who is responsible for the brutal murders. From the original prime suspects to the latest, we will attempt to make sense of the crime and come to a logical conclusion about who is responsible for the Lake Bodom murders. Join us as we delve into the murky waters of Lake Bodom in search of answers to one of the most infamous cold cases in history. Mila Irmeli Björklund and Anja Tuulikimäki of Espoo, Finland, set out on a camping excursion on June 4, 1960. Their 18-year-old boyfriends, Seppo Antero Boisman and Niels Wilhelm Gustafsson, accompanied the 2 young women. They chose a well-known campsite on the shores of Bodominjärvi, or Lake Bodom. The adolescents' arrival at the campsite and afternoon went without incident as they enjoyed their time in nature. The tranquility of the scenery and time with friends would soon be shattered into a gruesome crime scene. On the morning of June 5th, between 4 and 6 a.m., Björklund, Mäki and Boisman were stabbed and beaten to death through their tent from the outside. Gustafsson sustained a concussion, a fractured jaw, and several shattered facial bones due to the attack. At 6 a.m., a group of boys saw the gruesome scene from afar when they saw the slain teens' collapsed tent on the lakeshore. Furthermore, they saw a blond man walking away from it. At 11 a.m., Esko Oiva Johansson, a carpenter, discovered the victims' bodies. He duly contacted the authorities, who arrived at the scene around noon. Mäki and Boisman's bodies were discovered inside the tent, but Björklund, Gustafsson's fiancée, was found nude from the waist down and sprawled next to the unconscious Gustafsson on top of the tent. Björklund was also in the worst condition of the victims and had been stabbed multiple times after her death. The victims of the Lake Bodom murders had been dead for over 6 hours at that point. The subsequent police investigation can only be described as amateurish and disorganized. What followed was a catastrophe for the authorities. The crime scene was in disarray, and there were no apparent suspects. Gustafsson's injuries precluded him from providing a detailed account of the event, and there was little else to go on. The assailant apparently attacked the victims from outside the tent with a knife and an undetermined blunt object. These weapons have never been found. The killer took several items the detectives deemed odd, including the keys to the victims' motorcycles, which were still where the teenagers had left them. Gustafsson's shoes were discovered approximately 500 meters from the crime scene, partially buried. The police did not secure the crime site or document the details, which was later recognized as a critical error and allowed a multitude of police and public to trample and tamper with the evidence. This error was compounded by the fact that the military was summoned to assist in the search for lost objects at the lake, some of which were never located. These soldiers further contaminated the crime scene. The police decided to hypnotize Gustafsson from July 2nd to July 5th in an attempt to unearth any suppressed memories of the night of the murders. Olavi, a 14-year-old witness who witnessed the blonde male suspect, was also hypnotized. During hypnosis, both boys described the suspect, and based on their descriptions, a suspect identikit was created, but nothing came of it. From the 2 hypnotized boys' testimony, a description of the man they saw was disseminated. The suspect was between 20 and 30 years old, had an average body type, a round face, long blonde trimmed back hair, Red cheeks, a short neck, a high forehead with wrinkles, large eyes, normal ears, a straight nose, forceful lips, a firm jaw, normal light brows, white teeth, and large thick fingers. His outfit consisted of a plaid shirt with black buttons and a black and green cardigan. Throughout the subsequent years, numerous suspects' names have surfaced. Some may be valid, while others have been disproven by the passage of time. Why has the Lake Bodom case not been solved? And who are these suspects? Pauli Luoma. Authorities initially sought a man spotted in the area carrying a sack containing the victim's possessions. He was carrying a bicycle and had a black beard. He was also observed leaving the woodlands wearing a bloody shirt. Luoma was an escapee from a labor camp, but he had an alibi for the night. During the time of the murders, he was in the Otaniemi neighborhood of Espoo. Lake Bodom is 18 kilometers from Otaniemi and 23 minutes away. Could he have murdered the teenagers, traveled home, and set up his alibi? Karl Valdemar Gillström. Suppose investigators are looking into a case involving the murder of teenagers who had been camping. In that case, it makes sense that they would eventually focus on a local individual known to possess a loathing for both children and campers. Karl Valdemar Gillström was that individual, given his reputation for throwing boulders at campers and cutting their tent supports. Gillström had a history of violent behavior, having previously confessed to killing his neighbor while intoxicated, before denying it. Neighbors reported seeing him walking home early on the morning of the homicides, but they said nothing because they were aware of his history of violence and feared retribution. Later, he was seen pouring concrete down a well, an unusual act, but investigators disregarded this piece of information. Some suspect that this was an attempt to conceal the murder weapons. The homicides were never officially attributed to Gillström, but his story has a peculiar ending. Gillström asked a friend what he should do if he had been involved in the murders, to which the friend replied that he should commit suicide by drowning himself in the lake. Otherwise, he would spend the rest of his life in prison. That is precisely what Karl Valdemar Gillström would do shortly thereafter. Pentti Soininen. In the mid-1960s, a violent felon named Pentti Soininen boasted to a fellow inmate that he was the perpetrator of the horrific murders at Lake Bodom. Given his history of violence and the fact that he resided around the lake at the time of the homicides, Soininen is a probable suspect. In a spooky coincidence, Soininen would hang himself in prison on the 9th anniversary of the homicides on June 6, 1969. However, Soininen's age is a compelling argument against him being the perpetrator. At the time of the assaults, he was 14 years old. Many doubt whether he could have taken out 4 larger teenagers on his own. Hans Asman. Hans Asman was by far the most intriguing suspect. Asman was a German immigrant to Finland and later Sweden. He was allegedly a KGB agent. It is common knowledge that he resided in Finland in the 1950s and 1960s. A former police officer claims that in December 1997, Asman contacted him and invited him to hear his life story. During World War II, Asman served in the Nazi SS and as security at the Auschwitz concentration camp. After falling in love with a Jewish woman, he became disillusioned by Nazism. Upon discovering the relationship, the Nazis sent him to the Eastern Front. The Soviets captured him there and sent him to a prison camp. While there, he decided to join the KGB as a spy. On the morning of the homicides, Asman showed up at a hospital in Helsinki wearing blood-stained clothing and soil under his fingernails. According to reports, he spoke incoherently, and when physicians weren't attending to him as quickly as he desired, he feigned to be unconscious. Indeed, this unusual behavior and timing points him as a suspect. According to the boys at Lake Bodom, the man they saw had long blonde hair. Asman sported the same hairstyle in the 1960s. Asman was investigated by police as a possible suspect, but he had an alibi, so he was not pursued further. Additionally, he has been linked to 2 other unsolved murders in Finland. What most likely happened? The Lake Bodom murders seem to be relegated to the annals of countless cold cases until, in 2004, forensic science had advanced significantly since the 1960s. These scientific advances led to Niels Gustafsson, yes, that's Niels Gustafsson, the sole survivor, or more precisely, his shoes being examined again under a microscope. Gustafsson was apprehended toward the end of March 2004, nearly 44 years after the crime. Based on new forensic analysis, the Finnish National Bureau of Investigation proclaimed the case had been solved at the beginning of 2005. According to the prosecution's interpretation of the bloodstains on his shoes, Gustafsson was intoxicated and had been thrown out of the tent when he attacked Boisman, breaking his jaw in a fight that escalated into 3 murders. Investigators believed Gustafsson may have been motivated by jealousy, a theory supported by a witness who claimed to have witnessed an argument between Gustafsson and Boisman on the night of the homicides. The trial began on August 4, 2005. Gustafsson's defense attorney argued that the murders were the work of 1 or more outsiders, and that Gustafsson's injuries rendered him incapable of murdering 3 people. It had always been known that the killer's shoes, which he hid 500 yards away from the tent, belonged to Gustafsson, who was discovered barefoot on top of the tent. Modern DNA analysis was crucial for the prosecution because it revealed that the blood of the 3 murdered victims was on Gustafsson's shoes, but that his blood was entirely absent. The prosecution's evidence of what happened that night is the lack of Gustafsson's blood on the shoes. His injuries were self-inflicted and had occurred at a different time to the attack on the murdered victims, and he faked the theft of items by hiding them to make it look like a robbery. The prosecution attempted to strengthen their case by alleging that the young boys identified Gustafsson as the tall blonde man at the crime scene. It was also alleged that he had been heard making an incriminating remark and had confessed to a woman about his culpability a decade after the incident. On October 7, 2005, all allegations against Gustafsson were dropped. The court explained the verdict due to the inconclusiveness of the prosecution's evidence, the lack of proof that Gustafsson had a motive proportionate with a crime of such extreme gravity, and the impossibility of knowing the facts with certainty given the 44 years that had passed since the crime. The state of Finland compensated him €44,900 for the mental distress caused by his lengthy detention, but he was denied permission to prosecute Finnish newspapers for libel. 63 years is a lifetime away. Solving a case over that amount of time past is nearly impossible. Looking over the compromised evidence due to amateur police work and the possible suspects, Niels Gustafsson is still the only person who knows what transpired that night. Did he kill 3 innocent people in a drunken, jealous rage, or was it the mystery man at the 3 victims' funeral? A man caught on camera at the funeral looks suspiciously like an identikit of the Lake Bodom killer. It wouldn't be the first time a killer has attended their victim's funeral. 24 years later in neighboring Sweden, another tent murder would take place at Lake Apojaure under just as mysterious circumstances as the Lake Bodom murders. Could they be connected? Who do you think killed the 3 teenage campers? Please leave us your thoughts in our comment section below.